and acquire a lot of wisdom from the information that you're going to get today. Just for those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Bebe Clement, and I am the host of the Bebe Means Business show. And this is the show that you don't want to miss. Anything and everything you ever wanted to know about business and entrepreneurship and building wealth, we discuss it on this show with the aim that you will become financially free very soon. That's the whole aim. So what happened last week is we have, again, for those of you who don't know, we had a repeat show because sometimes we have listeners request that, oh, Bebe, this show was really good. I'd really like to hear it again. Could you repeat it? And so every so often, every few weeks, we will repeat the show. The one that's voted the best one, we repeat the show. So that's what happened last week. And then this week, as you can see, is a live show. So this week, I'm going to be talking about wealth creation lessons from the Jews. And this is part 2. A couple of weeks ago, I had part 1. And this is part 2 because there's a lot that we can learn from the Jews. Now, why are we even talking about them? Well, for many reasons that are pertinent to the theme of this program. The Jews are probably the wealthiest ethnic group in America, ethnic minority group in America. They form 30% of the richest top 100 of the Forbes rich list. Now, considering the fact that there are only about 7.6 million Jews in the whole of America, in other words, they only make up about 2.4% of the whole population, the fact that they feature about 30% of the top 100 richest Forbes list is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And this pattern is not a one-off in America. It is repeated all over the globe. Whatever country they're in, it is pretty much the same kind of statistics that you'll find. So clearly, as a people, the Jews know a thing or two about wealth creation, and as a result, I think that it is pertinent upon us to have a look and see what it is that these people do, what is it that they know, what is it that they practice, what is it that they have imbibed into their culture that makes them financially free, that makes them so good in relation to creating wealth, that makes them so focused when it comes to money and entrepreneurship and business. What are their secrets to success? And yes, you can think about it from a religious point of view, but there's so much more to it. It's not just a religious thing. There's so much more to it. There are certain lifestyle traits that the Jewish community have that we would do well to educate ourselves about and to adopt into our own culture. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. Now, for those of you who missed the first show, I want to just do a quick roundup of some of the pertinent things that I raised in relation to those practices and their knowledge and what they do that makes them so good with money, just so that you're aware and I can bring you up to speed so that what we discussed today will make more sense to you. Okay, so some of the things that we looked at that makes them successful with money is the success with money is not something that happens in their adulthood. First of all, they raise their kids with the expectation of economic and social success. They raise their kids that way. In other words, they aim their kids at professions that they know make money and produce wealth. So they don't have this attitude of, oh, well, let's just see where this child goes. They kind of look at their kids as arrows, and arrows you don't just chuck, you aim them at specific targets. So that's what they do. And I got to say, I think as regards that, the black community is doing very well because we tend to do that as well. I'm not sure whether we're as firm about that with the current generation, and when I say the current generation, I mean like my kids. But definitely, my generation, our parents did that. They aimed us at certain professions. They've done the research. They saw that certain professions made money, doctors, lawyers, engineers, that kind of thing. And they aimed us in that direction. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that you must choose your child's profession. That's not what I'm suggesting. So if, for instance, your child is clearly has no idea about maths or biology, there's no point in you trying to push them towards studying medicine. But what I'm saying is that they tend to have expectations of their kids, very high expectation of their kids. They convey or communicate those expectations to their kids, and they steer those kids in that direction. And there's nothing wrong in doing that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, I told this story, I think, recently on another platform. When we were young, one of my kid's sisters, at the time, she was probably about 6 or 7, my father used to say to her, you're really good at maths, you're doing very well, you're so smart, you're so intelligent, somebody like you should be an accountant. You'd be brilliant as an accountant. All these special people become accountants and stuff like that. He kind of sold her the idea without her knowing that he was aiming her towards it. So by the time she was 10, if anybody asked her, what do you want to do with your life? She said, I want to be an accountant. Thankfully, she actually grew up with that. She grew up with that vision. And today she's a chartered accountant making a very good income, and she's very happy doing that. So there's nothing wrong in doing that, and that's something that we can adopt from the Jewish community. Now, they have been very strategic about assessing and understanding the economic environment in which they live. And I gave the example of in America at the beginning of the 20th century, the older immigrants, when they were assimilating the newer immigrants into the American system, they would have them in their homes. They would either have them as lodgers in their homes, or they'd invite them around for dinner. And after dinner, they would actually sit them down and teach them English, because as you know, a lot of these Jewish people, they were coming from all over Europe, they were coming from Russia, they were coming from Germany, where English was not their first language. But they had assessed the situation, and they saw that if these people can't speak English, they're going to find it very, very difficult to prosper financially. So they took it upon themselves to do that, to educate them about what they needed, what was this deficit by way of knowledge in this new economy that they were in that would inhibit them from becoming financially free, and it was the language. And so they took it upon themselves. Again, I think this is something that we should adopt. Many of us in the UK, and I know I've mentioned this before, but many of us in the UK that came over in the 80s and 90s, we struggled. And indeed, many of us are still struggling because there was nobody to teach us the system. So I think that's a good thing to do. They send their children to the best schools that they can afford. Again, if you can afford to send your child to a private school, then by all means do that, because connections are made in these schools, and connections are very, very important. But now we understand that it's not even necessarily what you know, because if it's what you know, the blacks, particularly in the UK, are very well educated, so it's not a matter of what you know, it is who you know. Making those connections at a very early age and growing up with those connections are really, really important. So if you can afford to get, the best school that you can afford, I'm not saying go get yourself into debt or or something like that in order to provide a good education for your child, but the best education that you can afford, then please provide it for your children. They expose them to programs that will build them up. Again, do that. Summer holidays are coming. Don't let your children, especially if they're teens, don't let them sit at home for 3 months doing absolutely nothing. Just like they say that an idle mind is a playground for the devil. So get your children into programs that will begin to make them think about their future, think about wealth creation, think about money, and most importantly, I think about how they can become job creators rather than job seekers. The day of us being job seekers, that is gone. We've got to start thinking job creation. They also help their children develop a broad vocabulary and good public speaking skills, which again is very, very important in every sphere of life, particularly in the area in which we're in. You've heard me say this before, that as far as I'm concerned, singularly the most important skill of the 21st century is the ability to be able to speak well, confidently, clearly in public. Very, very important. They also have a number of free loan societies where they lend money to new immigrants. Again, this is something I think we should adopt. For that to be a success, of course, they show integrity in financial matters. Again, something that we need to adopt. Okay, they have a number of foundations that support community services, and I think that's important as well. All right, so I think that's pretty much brought us up to speed. So I want to welcome you once again, if you're just joining us, to Wealth Creation Tips from the Jewish Community, Part 2. Wealth Creation Tips from the Jewish Community, Part 2. So here's the first one. Jews zealously deploy their wealth and time for charity and social action. Now, for those of you who listened to the first part of this program, you remember that I said that one of their views, or one of their principles is that if you take care of your own will take care of you. And part of them taking care of their own is to deploy their wealth and time for charity and social action. Now, this is really, really important, and I think this is an area that we can improve upon, because a lot of times in my community we are very focused on chasing the money. We don't see the bigger picture. And so I think it's important that we engage well-organized and large-scale efforts to raise funds for our causes, educational causes, health causes, business causes, whatever it is. I mean, can you imagine if we had an organization in the UK that provided interest-free loans for Black-owned startups? Can you imagine how that would work? What that would do in helping people? Because one of the things, I was reading a report recently, and I'm going to actually discuss that report, I think, next week or the week after. I was reading a report about Black entrepreneurs in the UK, and one of the biggest issues is our lack of access to funds, our lack of access to startup funds and growth funds. So if we had our own, we wouldn't have to go cap in hand to other communities. If we had our own organizations that could provide a seed fund to people who are starting up businesses that come from our community, that would help so many people, because a lot of people, their business doesn't get off the ground, not for lack of ideas, not for lack of wanting to do what they want to do, not for lack of desire, and not for lack of expertise, but because they don't have the money. So I think that's something that we should look at. I found it interesting when I was doing a bit more research about this. I was reading a particular book, Business Success, Jewish Wisdom for Business Success, and this is a book by Rabbi Levi Brackman. And he was saying that the mentality behind giving, or the mentality behind deploying their wealth for charity and social action, is not just to give. The aim is to ensure that you produce an independent recipient. An independent recipient. In other words, what they're saying is that the aim of giving to you is to help you get on your feet. Not just to give to you for the sake of giving to you, so that you remain a charity case and you come back again next year for the same thing. No, the aim is to give to you so that you can stand on your own 2 feet. You can become productive, and you are now in a position to help somebody else. And again, I think this is really, really important, that we don't become continuous beggars, or continuously seeking for help. That should really be a one-off. I think it's important that we do that. Okay, my phrase would be each one reach one. That's what we should be thinking. Each one reach one. What can I do to lift my brother out of financial poverty? What can I do? And then once he's lifted, he should automatically be thinking, what can I now do? Now that I'm standing on my feet, what can I do? Can I go into schools and teach children how to have good financial habits? Can I help single parents? Can I just start an organization that helps single parents who want to go into business? All kinds of things. There's so many things that we can do to help each other. I spoke about free loan societies that help Jewish immigrants get on their feet. Again, if we could have that, everybody coming into the UK from perhaps Africa who wanted to start a business, they'd have access to loans or grants that we could assist them with. Now, I wanted to look at their purchases, the way they spend money, because I think this is an area that holds us back in our community, the way they spend money and what they spend money on. Now, when you think about major purchases, major purchases, your main purchase in life, or probably the largest investment that you will make in life, is probably your property, where you live, or property that you buy to as an investment. But buying a home is usually your greatest investment. Once that is out of the way, the next thing, or your next major purchase, is most likely your car. And what you drive, I think, is a good indication of what is driving you as a person, what you drive. Now, I discovered that the average Jewish person does not believe in leasing cars. Isn't that interesting? They don't believe in leasing cars. They would rather buy a fairly used car outright, because they understand that a car is not an appreciable asset, and they are in the habit of buying appreciable assets. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is really, really important, because sadly, the majority of our community spends a lot of money on depreciative assets. The women in my community spend a lot of money on things like lace, shoe and bag sets, things like that, rather than appreciable assets. So I want to stick to the whole issue of buying a car. A car loses its value, or begins to lose its value, the minute you drive it out of the showroom. In fact, I was reading some research a few years ago, and they were saying that if you drive your car, if you lease a car, and you drive it to the end of the road, and you turn around, and you go back to the showroom, and you offer that car for sale, they will offer you, most likely within the range of something between 20 and 25% less than what you just bought it for before you drove it out of the showroom. Can you imagine that? That something that we spend so much money on loses its value at such a rapid rate. In fact, they say that a car loses most of its value, whether you lease it, whether you buy it outright, whether it's secondhand, most of its value within the first year of its purchase. So really, does it make any sense if you are on an average salary, you don't own your own home, and yet you're spending tens of thousands in leasing a car? Does it make financial sense? Now again, I say this because, as you are aware, the whole essence of this program is to help to give you information and tips and make you think about your financial spending and what you are doing with your money that might be holding you back from becoming financially free. And oftentimes we don't realize that these things carry the kind of weight that they do. So rather than, if you are thinking about going to spend, I don't know, tens of thousands of pounds on a new car, perhaps buying a fairly used car might serve you better. I don't know, just something to think about. I'm not trying to dictate to you what you do with your own money. I'm just trying to give you something to think about that you might not have thought about. Okay. Still on the same topic, I was watching an Instagram clip yesterday, very interesting one. And there's this wealth creator, I forgot his name, this black wealth creator in America. And he was saying that last year in America, 50% or twice the average of white people, black people bought twice as many Mercedes-Benz as white people did last year, even though the average Caucasian person has twice the household income of the average black person. So I'm going to say that again, that double the number of Caucasians bought a Mercedes-Benz. In other words, the black community in America bought double the number of Mercedes-Benz last year than the white community, even though the white community, the average household income is double that of the average black man. And he was saying that we are surrounding ourselves with what looks like success rather than actually becoming successful. And those who know me very well know that this is something I say quite often. We are, ladies and gentlemen, it grieves me to say, but this is true. I mean, I teach on this and I train on this and I meet lots and lots and lots of people because I do webinars, seminars, as you well know. I talk about wealth creation a lot. But this is true, that we are settling, we are giving up the great for the good when it comes to wealth creation. We are settling for what looks like success rather than going after success itself. And so this is something that we need to look at and to amend if we're serious about being financially free as a people. Okay, I think I'm going to take a break here, and then when we come back, we're going to delve into the whole issue of home ownership. You don't want to miss this because this is really important if you're going to grow your wealth. Be back in a moment.
Hi
everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to the BB Means Business Show. This is your weekly dose of information, education, knowledge, advice, tips on anything and everything to do with business and entrepreneurship, with the aim of making sure that you become financially free and that you are able to pass your wealth to generations to come. It's not just about you, not just about me, not just about living in a bigger house, but for generations, building generational wealth. That's what we need to start thinking, building generational wealth. And today, again, for those of you who are just joining, we are doing part 2 of the show, Wealth Creation Tips from the Jewish Community. There's a lot that we can learn, ladies and gentlemen, from our Jewish brothers and sisters. So let's humble ourselves and, get all the information and advice that we can so that we can duplicate what they've done. They say that success leaves clues. So let's pick up as many clues as we can so that we can become financially free. Okay, so we were talking about our spending habits, what we spend our money on, because what you spend your money on will go a long way in dictating whether you become financially free in the end. And so I was speaking about the car. Now I want to speak about owning your own home, because like I said, owning your own home is probably one of the biggest investments that you will make in relation to building wealth. So the Jewish community, they advocate home ownership, not renting. They frown upon renting. And I was thinking about this actually, and I was thinking about all my Jewish friends. I don't actually have any Jewish friends that don't own their own home. In fact, not just one home. They own, all the ones I know, own many homes, not just the one. So I didn't realize that this was part of their thinking in relation to finance. They advocate home ownership and frown against renting. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here because this is really, really important that we get this. And for those of you who are renting, can I just say this up front? This is not to embarrass you or to make you feel bad about yourself. I rented for many, many years. But all I'm trying to help you do is to dream bigger, to aim higher, to achieve more by way of financial success. That's what I'm aiming to help you do. So please receive it in the spirit in which it's set to you. Now, I want to do a little bit of educating. Now, we live in a capitalist society, and I've said this before, most countries in the world right now practice to some degree, some level of capitalism. But we live in a capitalist society, and in a capitalist society, ownership is everything. It is what you own that makes you wealthy. It's not what you rent. It's not what you lease. It's not what you borrow. It is what you own that makes you wealthy. That's how a capitalist society works. Whether we like it or not, that's just how it works. Now, the importance, I want to emphasize the importance of owning your own home, again, to provoke you to want to do it. So, some of the advantages of owning your own home. A home tends to appreciate purely by market forces. Capital gains purely by market forces. And that means that when you buy your own home, except there's a property market crash, outside of a property market crash, and actually that's actually a good time to buy property because seasons change, it can't crash forever. But aside from the property market crash, when you buy a home, you don't necessarily have to do anything to it. The market itself will make it appreciate in value. And so that's one of the main reasons why it's a great investment. It's a great investment. Another advantage of buying your home as opposed to renting is when you rent, if anything happens to you, you can't pass it to your children. You can't pass it to your children. I've actually known family members whose names were not on the tenancy agreement, and then the named tenant died, and the council asked them to leave, even though they've been there for years. But the council are not obliged to house them. They were not the tenant. So again, this is really, really important when it comes to when you're thinking about building wealth, that you acquire a property so that you can pass it to your children. And you know the interesting thing, one of the things I discovered when I was renting was that I was actually paying in rent the equivalent, if not more, than what I would have been paying as by way of a mortgage. So you're not necessarily doing yourself any favors by not getting a mortgage. So yes, so that's important. You can also lend against it. You can lend against your property. You can increase its value by doing just very minor work on your property. Do you know even painting your house can increase the value? Let's not even talk about adding a room. We added a room to the house that we live in, and it went up by about 40,000 just by adding a room. So there are things that you can do, just painting it, doing something like changing the electrics or stuff like that, or adding a kitchen or extending the back of it. There are certain things that you can do that can increase the value of your home tremendously. So, and again, you can't do that when you're renting. You can't extend the building when you're renting. It's not yours. So those kind of things you got to be careful about, and you do actually need the permission of the landlord if you are going to make major changes to the property. You can use it to increase your income. In other words, you can make it work for you. So you can rent out one of the rooms. Let's say the kids have gone off to uni and you've got some spare rooms. You can rent out some of the rooms and start getting money for that. You can do Airbnb. There are all kinds of things that you can do now with your property that will bring in money into your pocket. It's an asset. It's an asset, and an asset is supposed to be putting money in your pocket. You can use it as collateral. In other words, you can lend against it. So you want to go to the bank, and maybe you want to start a business, and you don't have the cash. You don't have enough cash. You can go to the bank and say, listen, I own a property, or I own a couple of properties. If you can lend me the money, this is what I'm going to use as collateral. Now, again, if you are renting and you go down to the bank and you don't have any other investments, and somebody comes along who owns their own property and has consistently been paying their mortgage on time, who do you think they're going to lend the money to? It's a no-brainer, really. So again, you can see the reason why it is important that we buy property if we're serious about building wealth. Okay, I'll get off the property issue. Another thing that the Jews do is they tend to avoid fear-driven reactions when it comes to business. And they understand the connection between other things in their life that may have a bearing on their ability to do well in business. So for instance, I understand that they do everything possible to avoid fights, because they understand that fights and disagreements, particularly in business, they drain you. And so rather than spend time arguing whose name is on the door and who didn't do what and all that kind of thing, their mindset is solution driven. How do we get past this, and how do we move forward? So again, this is something that we need to adapt so that we don't let our ego get in the way of us moving forward. We don't major or minors in business. And I say this because I often see it. I remember a guy telling me a few years ago, he was an African cash and carry owner, and he was doing very, very well. And there was another guy in the same vicinity who was also doing well. So there were competitors in the market. So he just thought, you know what, if we work together, we could actually do better. We could have a greater reach. So he set up a meeting with the guy and said, listen, you know what, let's join forces. Let's join forces. And then we can, if we join forces, we can lock up this whole area. They were based in South London. We can lock up the Southeast in relation to, buying African products, rice, beans, gari, all those kind of things. We can lock up the market. And so the guy said, you know what, I think that's a really good idea with the kind of reach that we both have. Let's do that. So they decided to set up another company that they would both own, and they would progress from there. After a while, I was asking, what happened? I haven't seen any signs of this coming. He said, Bibi, do you know what? It's not going to happen. I said, why? He said, because we were arguing over whose name was going to be on the door. And in the end, I said to the guy, all right, you know what? I don't care. You call it whatever name you want to call it. So let's say it was intended to be, let's say Bibi and Archie were going to go into business. They were arguing over whether it should be Bibi, Clement and others, or Archie and others, or something ridiculous like that. And as a result of that, the negotiations broke down, and it didn't happen. And it was such a missed opportunity, because they would have done exactly what they were proposing. They would have locked up the market. But again, let's not major on minors, because we do ourselves a disservice, and it hampers our growth. Okay, just to say, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a live show, and we like to hear your feedback. If you have any comments or you have any questions that you want to ask about the show, then please do. I'm going to take a break in a little while, and then you can, depending on where you're joining us from, if you're joining us from Facebook, just put your questions or your comments in the chat, and I will read them out. And if you are joining us from Twitter, our Twitter handle is @StarRadio. You can do the same thing, and we will read out those questions. And of course, if you're joining us via WhatsApp, you can dial 07539 661 744. That number again, 07539 661 744, or email us at info@StarRadio UK, and we will call out, or we will read out any questions or any comments that you may have, or we will just give a shout out to you because you have joined us today. So thank you very much for that. Okay, just before we go to a break, I just wanted to mention, for those of you who don't yet know, now the Bibi Means Business Show is open for you to promote all your goods and services, your products and services on the show. So you can advertise on the show now. Something's going to go up during the break, it will give you all the information about that. You want to play a jingle, you want to be a guest on the show, you have a new product coming out, you have an event that you want to promote. There's lots of ways in which you can promote yourself now on the Bibi Means Business Show. And the Bibi Means Business Show has about a 3,000 viewership every week. So this is not a market that you can afford to ignore. And particularly if you are trying to get into the African market, because we have a wide following in the African market, this is the show to advertise on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take another break, and I'll be back in a minute, and we will continue with getting our tips from the Jewish community.
Hi everyone, it's Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bibi Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you once again for tuning into the Bibi Means Business Show. And as you know by now, we are taking tips from the Jewish community for wealth creation. We're having a look at some of their practices and their mindset and things that they do, their culture that they've imbibed, things that they've been imbibed into their culture in relation to wealth and becoming financially free that we can learn from. Success leaves clues. So let's pick up on those clues so that we can do the same as well. Okay. So just before the break, we were looking at the importance of owning your own home and getting into the property market. I wanted to say this. A lot of people say to me, Bibi, there's no way. The property market is off the charts at the moment. There's no way I can afford to get into the property ladder. That is no longer true. That's no longer true. And I'm just going to give a very quick example. Some time ago, we had the honor of having a lady on the show called Bimbola Osagie, and she owns a property investment club, whereby you no longer have to have 200, 300,000 to buy your own property. She has a lot of people pooling their resources together and then having different property investments so that you can own property. So it might be that, a group of people buy a property, they just do it up. It's a property that needs renovating, they do it up, they then sell it, and everybody shares the proceeds depending on how much they put in. that kind of thing. So, obviously she's not the only one. I'm just talking about her one because it's one that I know of. But there are, if you do your research, there are investment clubs now that you can become a part of. You no longer need to have the whole set of money to be able to join the property market. There are ways and means in which you can become a part of the property ladder or the property market without having all the funds yourself, or not have, contributing all the funds yourself. You can join forces with other people. They can show you how to do it. It's not as difficult as it was back in the day. So no more excuses, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, another thing that the Jews do is they make sure that they deal with fear. They deal with fear in business because, fear often promotes inaction in business at a time when action is needed, especially where instinct or gut feeling is required in business. If an opportunity might come along, it might have a very small window, a period of time, and your gut or your instinct says, yes, this is for me, I gotta jump, I gotta do it now. If you are paralyzed by fear, that opportunity may pass you by. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, sadly, there are some opportunities in business that never come around again. So you've got to deal with the element of fear. What is the worst that can happen? The worst that usually happens is that you lose money. That's the worst that can happen. So what? You can lose money and make it again. Now, I'm not saying that you should be foolish and take out all the equity in your home and splash it out on some business idea that's not been tested or tried. But you must have an element of risk and make sure you are not paralyzed by fear. So when a business opportunity comes along, a good thing to do is to question yourself and say, what is making me hesitant about this? If it is fear, then you need to deal with that. You need to deal with that because, like I said, it will paralyze you and will make you lose opportunities. Okay, now when dealing with fear, one of the things that you need to do is think about how your business should be changing, and see if it is fear of the unknown or fear of uncharted waters that is keeping you loyal to something that is no longer serving its purpose or serving your business well. So you need to look at that. So I actually wanted to challenge you this week, over the next 28 hours or for the rest of the week. Have a look at all your business practices. Have a look at all your business practices. And be honest with yourself. And sometimes you might need somebody else to have a look at it because sometimes we are in denial about some of the things that we're doing. Look at your business practices and see what is no longer working. What is no longer working for your business? I remember we had a young man on the program a little while ago. His name is Sam Henshaw. He's a singer-songwriter, very successful singer-songwriter. Shout out to Sam Henshaw, actually. He's on a tour in America at the moment. And he was saying that one of the things that he was afraid of when we asked him, what have you learned about the business side of music? He was saying one of the biggest lessons he learned was that he was afraid to let certain people go. And yet, when he thought about it, those people were no longer serving the needs of the business. But because he had grown up with those people, they'd been friends for years, and then when he went solo, when he became a musician, they joined him, maybe they were musicians or whatever, they were working alongside him. But as he grew, he could see that actually they were no longer serving their purpose. And that's not something derogatory to them. Sometimes they have outgrown him, or they wanted to move on to bigger things, or the vision no longer aligns, that kind of thing. But oftentimes we will stay loyal to things that are no longer serving our purpose in business because we're afraid of how people are going to react. Oh, if I ask this person to leave, how are they going to take it? They've been with me for years. They've seen me through the bad times. How are they going to take it? How will that be received? And so, you keep them on, even though they're not doing what they're supposed to do any longer. So these are the kind of things that I'm challenging you to start looking at your business practices. What is working in your business that might need tweaking? So, for instance, you might want to look at your website. Is your website still fit for purpose? Perhaps when you started it and you were a one-man business and you were maybe offering just one product or one service, it was fine. But now you've grown and you're offering different services. Does your website reflect those new services? So I remember when I first of all started, I hadn't written a book at the time, so maybe I was just promoting speaking engagements in the area of wealth. But now I offer speaking engagements in a much wider area of information. So I talk about leadership, purpose-driven living, the spiritual aspects, things like that. Does your website reflect that? So you might want to tweak your practices. Also, things like what needs changing. It's not that it's not working, but it does need changing. So, for instance, do you still need a physical office? That might be something to look at post-COVID. Do you still need a physical office? Or do you still need an office, but you could easily downsize? You no longer need such a large space. Could you downsize? Do your staff still need to be coming in Monday to Friday? Or could they actually work part-time from home? Do they need to actually be working 9 to 5? Or would it be more effective? So let's say, for instance, you had, you had a nursing mother. Would it suit her better if she could work different hours? Because really, the important thing is that the work gets done. Except they're in a job or you're taking them on to physically be in a specific place, perhaps answering a phone or something like that, or reception on your office where they have to physically be there to receive clients. Really, does it really matter at what time of the day the work gets done, as long as the work gets done? That's all that matters. So these are the kind of things that you might want to start looking at, because the way in which we're doing business is changing, and a lot of us are refusing to change because we are afraid of change, not because what is ahead isn't better. Okay, so these are things that we could look at. Now, looking from a spiritual perspective, of course, most Jewish people are very, very intertwined with their religion. Their Judaism is strongly connected and imbibes every area of their life, business not being exempt. So, but they strongly believe that prayer without an intention of doing something yourself is a complete waste of time. In other words, like the Bible puts it, that faith without works is dead. And they understand that they are actually in partnership with God, so they expect to play a part in their own success story. So again, for those of us who are of the faith, when you're thinking about your business, don't put all the onus on God. Well, I prayed about it, and if God wants me to have it, He will make it happen. No, that is not how the Jews think at all. That's not how they think. They think, yes, I prayed about it, God will do His part, but I've got to do what I can do to ensure that it happens. So let's take that on. Let's do what we can do, and we leave the rest for Him to do. Okay? They are risk takers. Risk takers. They realize that situations change. What seems like an impossible situation can change if you will just take the risk. And again, like I said, I was reading Rabbi Bracklin's book, and he was saying that when he looks at the story of the crossing of the Red Sea, that the Red Sea would have remained a wall to the children of Israel if they had not put their foot on the Red Sea. So again, imbibing that into business practices, there are some things that in your gut you want to do. You know, deep down inside of you, you want to do, you're aiming for, you're dreaming about, you're hoping for. But you are scared to put to dip your toe in the water. Now, for as long as you let the fear and the lack of ability to take risk strangle you, you will remain where you are. That's the truth of it. You will remain where you are. You've got to put your foot on the Red Sea, speaking metaphorically. You have to do that. Otherwise, you will stay where you are. And you know what? Jim Rohn says, it's all risky. Staying where you are is a risk. Refusing to go forward is a risk. So you might as well go forward and see what happens. I'd rather take the risk and, hopefully find that the risk was worth taking, or take the risk and find out that I was wrong, then stay where I am and feel that, man, if only I had taken the risk, perhaps my life would have been different. So again, they see business as an extension of God's image as a creator. I love that. They recognize that God is a creator, and they see their business as an extension, and the success thereof as an extension of being creative. So often, despite what a lot of people say about Jewish people in relation to money, often they are not money driven when it comes to business. Yes, they want to make a profit, and they'd be stupid not to, but often that is not the sole motivation, or even the main motivation. They see that they have the ability to create. The money-making part is secondary. This get rich or die trying kind of mentality that is often prevalent in our community is not what motivates them. They see it as an opportunity to be like their creator, to be creative, to create something that did not formerly exist, to create something that will outlive them, that will be a legacy for generations to come. And I would encourage you to adapt that mindset as well. Don't be motivated just by the money. It's got to be about more than just the money. Okay. Now they understand and they employ the use of questions in business as a negotiating technique. Now, I'm going to backtrack a bit. I spoke again earlier about they raise their children to be able to communicate properly. And that communication goes beyond just giving a good speech. But they raise their children to be able to express their opinion, ask questions, and make demands. Now that grows with them into adulthood. And so they then use questions. A part of it is the ability to ask questions. They then use questions as a negotiating technique in business. Now, again, this is really, really important because it's not something that we're really good at. What we tend to do when we get a new client is to begin to rattle off all the great things, the wonderful things that our product and our service is going to do for their life, that kind of thing. But they don't do that. And I've got to say, from my own personal experience in recent years, when I learned about this, I kind of changed the way I approach my business, particularly in relation to negotiating, but also in relation to new clients. So rather than just rush in, and I understand it, sometimes you're just even grateful that the door has even opened for you, that you just rush in and you start speaking. But what I have learned to do now is to just breathe, take a step back, and set up an initial meeting. It might be a virtual meeting, it doesn't have to be in person. But just to get to know the client a little bit more and what it is that they do. And the best way to do this, ladies and gentlemen, is to ask questions. So let's say a client calls me and says, oh, Bebe, I'm having an event, I'd like you to come and speak. So rather than just say to them, oh, okay, this is how much I charge, I would have the initial meeting with them. And during that initial meeting, I would ask some of these questions. This event that you are about to hold, why are you holding it? So I want to know the motivation behind it, because again, that's a good negotiating tool for me. And then not only why are you holding it, but why are you holding it at this point in time? So it might be that something has happened in their company. Maybe they're about to be inspected, and then, or let's say they've been told that they are not diverse enough, and one of the ways in which they want to address this issue is to have somebody from the black community come in and speak to their staff, because hitherto they've never had a black speaker, that kind of thing. Now, that kind of information is good information to know. It's good information to know, because then there's a sense of urgency. And so when there's a sense of urgency, people are more willing to negotiate. Then I might ask things like, how many people are you expecting? What's the makeup of the people that you are expecting? What's the cultural makeup? What's the sex makeup? Are there going to be more men than women? Because again, that informs me how and where to pitch my talk. If there are more men, if it's going to be predominantly men, even the way I'll be dressed will be different when I turn up on the day. If it's women, the marketing material will have certain colors because certain colors appeal to the sexes differently. So those kind of things are important to know. Is it a sponsored event? So if they're receiving sponsorship, it's important that I know that, because if somebody's paying for it, then I'm going to be charging top dollar. Is there an entry fee? So if it's a free event that they are paying for themselves, again, that will inform me how I'm going to pitch my fee. But if they're charging a fee, so let's say it's a corporate event and they're charging something like £250, £500 per delegate, that kind of thing. Well, if you are charging that amount of money and I'm the top draw, then I should be paid accordingly. So those kind of things. How long will it last? So if they only want me to speak for 15 minutes rather than half a day, then again, that informs what kind of leeway I can give in relation to my fee. How long am I expected to speak for? So if it's a whole day event, then obviously I'm not going to be charging the same amount that I would charge if I'm only going to be speaking for 15 minutes. And if I'm only speaking, if I'm just one of many speakers, as opposed to being the main attraction, again, that's important. And then I would ask them something like, well, how much do you usually pay your speakers? Then that helps me gauge what their baseline is. Or I could say, what's your budget? So rather than say to them, I charge £1,000 a day, which is usually what I charge. I charge £1,000 a day. I find out for them, what is your budget? So they might say, oh, well, for our speakers, we normally just pay £300. And obviously you can tell that £300 to £1,000 there's a big difference. So if I had just said, I charge £1,000, they might just say, oh, well, baby, you know what, we'll get back to you. They might not tell me why they don't get back to me later on, and it might have been the price. Whereas if I ask them, what's your budget? And they tell me it's £300, and I ask them more about the event, I automatically start thinking of, okay, what other ways can I move them towards £1,000? So rather than say, oh, well, sorry, my fee is £1,000, I start thinking of other ways. So I might say something like, do you have exhibition stands? And they say yes. Okay, how much do you charge for your exhibition stand? So we're charging our delegates £250. And I said, okay, you know what? I usually charge £1,000. I can see from your budget that you can only afford £300, that kind of thing. Here's what I'll do. Would you be open to me having an exhibition stand for free? Give me an exhibition stand for free. So that's about £200 worth. So now I've moved a bit closer in value. It's not always about price, ladies and gentlemen. Price and value are not the same thing. So I've moved closer in value to the fee I wanted. Then I could say something like, okay, so I have my own people. I have my own business community. I might be able to bring about 30, 40 delegates. If I bring 40 delegates, we're going to fee share. So let's say they're charging £60 per delegate, and I say to them, if I bring 20 delegates, I want 20% or 30% of the entrance fee for all the delegates that I bring. And they say, okay, that sounds good, and we arrange a code so that we'll be able to recognize when my delegates register, and then we fee share like that. So there are lots of other ways. All that information came about because I asked questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be so desperate to jump in there and make the money that you lose that opportunity to ask questions. Understanding the client's business a little bit more puts you in a stronger negotiating position. Not only for just now, it lets you get to know and understand their business a bit more. Then you might be able to identify certain things that they need, that they didn't even know they needed. You'd be amazed some of the things that I'm able to come up with that the client didn't even know that they needed, just because I asked questions and then I suggested to them, and then they then begin to see you as more than just a speaker. They begin to see you as in an advisory role, they say, oh, Bibi, I didn't know you knew about this. Do you do consulting? And you say, yeah, I do business advisory consulting. Oh, okay. Actually, we might need you further down the line for something else, but I'll talk about that later. So you now have more than just the immediate event at hand that they wanted to hire you, just because you asked questions. So don't start with an offer or a demand. Start with an initial meeting just to get to know the client and ask as many questions as possible. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of the show. Just want to give you the heads up. Next week we're going to have a couple of special guests on the show. We're going to have Mark Dalgetti. Those of you who know him, Mark Dalgetti is doing very, very well. He has a company where he does teas and everything like that. If you go into your average supermarket, you will find his teas and coffees and all that in the supermarket. He's going to be on the show. He's going to be talking about a networking group that he leads. I'm also going to have Dee Lana on the show. She's also going to be a guest. She's going to be talking about a networking group that she leads, and I'm going to be talking about the networking group that I lead, which is Black Businesses UK, which has over 8,000 members. And the reason why I'm going to be talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, is because one of the things that research has shown is that Black people, particularly in the UK, are not taking advantage of networking groups. And there are so many advantages of you being a member of a networking group by way of growth in your business. So I want to, do an actual program on it so that you come to understand the importance and that you're doing yourself a disservice by not being a member of a networking group. So tell others. Next week we're going to be talking about networking, okay, and the importance of belonging to a networking group. So don't miss it. I hope you have a really great week. Go make some money. Don't forget me when you make your money. And we'll be here again same time next week. And as I always say, don't let life dictate to you. No. Rather, put your signature on life.